Turns out fame isn't all it's cracked up to be, and some of rock music's biggest icons have suffered under the weight of their own popularity. Kurt Cobain was famous for his dislike of fame. Initially, however, Cobain didn't shun the limelight. At one point early in his career, he wrote to every major record label he could in the hopes of becoming a rock god. Sadly, the Nirvana frontman soon found himself trapped by the consequences of his dreams. Nirvana's final album, In Utero, is filled with references to the dark side of fame, often decrying the judgmental attitude of the media. Despite his band's counterculture sound and aesthetic, Cobain quickly became a major celebrity icon and the subject of considerable hero worship. Shortly after the release of Nevermind, Cobain had his first taste of attention at a record release party. The shy Cobain was mobbed by fans, including kids from his old high school who demanded autographs. The attention was just too much, and he soon became known for his hatred of the press. Unfortunately, Cobain found that his dislike of celebrity life only seemed to make matters worse. In one famous interview, he complained about being hassled in public, saying, "Well, I've been confronted by people wanting to beat me up, by people heckling me and being so drunk and obnoxious because they think I'm this pissy rock star bastard who can't come to grips with his fame." Amy Winehouse's catastrophic slide into self-destruction was chronicled by the media in painful detail. Press scrutiny caused her to loathe fame and may have worsened her fragile condition. The extent of Winehouse's difficult relationship with the spotlight was revealed after her untimely death. Shortly after she passed, friends of Winehouse admitted on a BBC Radio 5 special that the singer never really wanted fame and fortune in the first place. She had been more interested in starting a family and having kids. Winehouse was often trapped in her home in an attempt to avoid the press, who were intent on gleefully displaying her darkest moments. In an interview with This Morning, Winehouse's one-time best friend, Tyler James, alleged that Winehouse had once lamented the dark side of fame.
She said, fame is like terminal cancer, I wouldn't wish it on anyone.
Some speculate that Winehouse's alcohol addiction was probably worsened by the way she was picked apart in the papers. Even before her success, she had faced numerous personal challenges, including bulimia and a long history of substance abuse. Ultimately, like many people, she was simply unable to deal with the pressure of fame and the cruelty of the British media. Winehouse died of alcohol poisoning in 2011, aged just 27. Lorde reached superstardom at the tender age of just 16 years old. Although many people at the time remarked she was wise beyond her years, she was, ultimately, still just a kid. And that meant she was facing all the growing pains that teenagers go through. At the same time, she had to deal with the enormous weight of public scrutiny. When she first became famous, Lorde would often go online and see cruel and unwarranted comments about her face and body. She later told NME, "I remember being made aware of my looks and my body in a way that I had never been." Being famous started to feel like a burden. As the peak of Lorde mania began to wane, she said she only felt relief. Body-shaming trolls aside, Lorde just doesn't enjoy the fakery of celeb life. She told CBS she was never comfortable with the PR that comes with being famous and compared it to running for political office. She much prefers to be tucked away in a studio or a library. She said, "You don't win by being really famous. I don't think that really helps make good work." Like fellow grunge legend Kurt Cobain, Pearl Jam's Eddie Vedder is well known for being deeply uncomfortable in the spotlight. Way back in 1993, when the band had just released their second album, Vedder was already apprehensive about their dizzying rise to fame. Feeling ill at ease with the pressure, Vedder and his bandmates withdrew as much as they could, despite the urgings of the group's handlers, who encouraged them to keep milking the situation for all it was worth. Vedder later told the New York Times, "As far as fame, when we were getting successful, it was like being on a freight train. You're in the engine room. There are no windows. You feel the velocity, but don't know where the train is going. We thought, we've got to slow down or change direction because there might be a bridge that's blown out and it'll all go away." Many years later, in 2021, Vedder told Kerrang! Magazine that he is still reluctant to speak to the press and may one day refuse to give interviews entirely. He said, "I don't want to be a star. It's not worth it, to have my picture taken and have my face everywhere."
Suddenly you can communicate with other famous people on a higher level. And waft around going, "Hi."
Like many musicians, Radiohead's Thom Yorke wanted to be famous from a young age, only to find fame was ultimately not fulfilling. He once told Dazed magazine, "I always assumed that fame was going to answer something, fill a gap, and it does the absolute opposite." Suddenly, Yorke realized that he had lost his sense of privacy and found that people were beginning to follow him around asking him questions. He didn't like their familiarity at all and soon longed to escape. Finding the attention and fame overwhelming, Yorke moved to the rural Cornish coast to avoid the crowds and reconnect with his art. Aside from all the unwanted publicity, Yorke struggled with the fact that he found his own biggest hit, Radiohead's 1992 song Creep, extremely irritating to perform. Today, the band rarely plays it at all, and Yorke has been criticized for repeatedly calling out fans who request it. Guitarist John Frusciante first left the Red Hot Chili Peppers in 1992 after cracking under the pressures of fame. Finding that the life of mindless hedonism he'd sunk into was no longer fulfilling, Frusciante stepped away from the band that made his name. The rock and roll lifestyle had deeply damaged Frusciante, and at one point he was almost destroyed by his addiction and mental health issues. Lead singer Anthony Kiedis described Frusciante's retreat in unsympathetic terms. He claimed that the guitarist felt their stardom had compromised the group's artistry, and that playing for arenas full of kids was deeply uncool. In his memoir, Kiedis wrote, "John was reading a lot of William Burroughs then, and his view, from Burroughs, was that every true artist is at war with the world." Although Frusciante would rejoin the band several times, he redirected a lot of his energy into his more low-key solo career, sequestered away from the media circus that revolved around the Chili's. In an interview with Fact Mag, he explained, "I don't want to make a spectacle of myself as a guitarist in the way that I did when I was in the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I wanted to be inside the music, not standing outside of it to grab your attention." Known as the Quiet Beatle for shying away from interviews, George Harrison was ill at ease with the hysteria of Beatlemania. Although his quietness was something of a myth when it came to his private personality, he really did not enjoy hobnobbing with the public or courting the press.
You don't like to talk then?
Well, not really. Sometimes if there's something to say, but there's really nothing to say these days.
For Harrison, the Beatles' hippie era of self-discovery was more than just a phase. He was a true soul searcher, a lover of green things, and a serious meditator. Equally, the glamour of show business didn't suit him at all, especially when the attention became too much to bear. On his 21st birthday alone, Harrison received 15,000 birthday cards from adoring fans. Harrison's widow, Olivia Harrison, claimed that after taking LSD, the hippie Beatle lost interest in fame and became committed to spiritual exploration instead. He also became paranoid about large crowds around the same time, fearful of assassination, a fear that seems prophetic given John Lennon's eventual demise at the hands of a fan. Harrison himself was nearly killed by a fan with schizophrenia during a home invasion in 1999. The screaming of thousands of fans also made Harrison intolerant of loud noises, and he longed to get away from it all. Ultimately, he found solace in his garden. Speaking to The Week, his son Donnie recalled, "I was pretty sure he was just a gardener. Being a gardener and not hanging out with anyone and just being home, that was pretty rock and roll, you know?" Peddler of feel-good tunes, Gregg Alexander saw huge success with the New Radicals hit You Get What You Give in the 1990s. But Alexander had no desire for fame, and he certainly didn't relish it when it arrived. He quit the band in fairly short order, and since then he has gone on to pen many other successful songs for other musicians. Alexander became a largely anonymous figure after leaving the New Radicals, and spent a few years doing charity work instead. In fact, when he agreed to speak to The Hollywood Reporter in 2014, it was the first interview he had given in 15 years. He explained that his hippie-ish persona was not just for show, and he deeply disliked the cottage industry that sprung up around the band when they hit the big time, saying, "You're this scrawny little f***ing musician, some 28-year-old, but all of a sudden, you become the conduit to people's bonuses, their greater agendas. There was a part of me that felt like it was going to f***ing destroy me. I saw one chance to run out of the Hotel California." Ultimately, Alexander has left the industry 3 times and has railed against what he calls the corporatization of music, referring to modern pop stars as mere props for selfies. Only the love of songwriting has kept him coming back. Among fame-loathing rock stars, Syd Barrett is an unusual case. Barrett shrank from fame due to a serious mental illness, and may not have hated celebrity so much had he been well. Although Barrett was a founding member of Pink Floyd in 1965, he had already quit the group by 1968, partly due to schizophrenia that may have been worsened by heavy drug use.
I think if you were in the position of being an incipient schizophrenic like he was, any hallucinogenics are a very bad thing.
Little is known about Barrett's later life. He gave a final interview in 1971 before vanishing for good. Barrett became notoriously reclusive, never speaking to his neighbors and taking few visitors. During the period when Barrett became unwell, he struggled to deal with a sudden rush of unwanted attention, a situation that exacerbated his creeping paranoia. Syd was attractive and extremely popular with women, so much so that groupies would show up at his house to see him. Before long, however, he refused to let anyone in when they came knocking. Even before the group was particularly famous, Barrett did not enjoy attention. He was shy around many people and would hide from those he didn't wish to speak to at parties. Barrett very successfully disappeared from public life and is rumored to have taken up painting in private. Dire Straits' Mark Knopfler broke up his incredibly successful band when he felt the group had become too big. Knopfler feared fame would go to his head, but he was also known to be shy by nature. It has long been rumored that Knopfler wore his famous headband at his concerts so that he would not be recognized when he took it off. Knopfler once told Rolling Stone that although he loved success, he hated fame, a state of being that he claimed has no redeeming features at all. Dire Straits were the biggest selling British rock artists of the 1980s, but despite their runaway success, Knopfler decided to break up the group in 1995. Knopfler's time in the band wreaked havoc on his personal relationships and caused a rift with his bandmate and brother, David Knopfler, who left the group early and never spoke to Mark again. The group's last tour also proved to be too much. While on the road, they played an astonishing 300 shows and cracked under the pressure. Knopfler later told The Independent, "Once we got to the point of carrying our own stage, I felt the whole thing was just too big. It's a trap that I just wanted to get out of. I needed to do something else, to try to improve as a writer and as a player, and I don't think being stuck in that kind of circus is where that's going to happen."